So, you're about to go out and buy your first motorcycle, and it's going to hopefully be a life-altering event. It'll either end in glorious two-wheels freedom, or you crying in the rain next to a bike that just simply will not start. Today, I want to talk you through 10 things that every rider should look out for before they hand over any cash for their first bike. But here's the twist. Just because you find a fault with that bike when you go and view it, it doesn't mean that it's game over. Sometimes it really is a red flag and an indicator that you need to walk away. Other times, it can be used as leverage because maybe, just maybe, you're looking for that project bike. And if so, a dodgy fork seal doesn't mean it's a problem. It could actually mean it's a discount. Let's start with documentation, arguably the most important bit when looking for a bike. Yes, you want to make sure there's some sort of service history with it, all that paperwork and stuff to make sure you've got some history of oil changes and chain maintenance, tyre changes, that sort of stuff. But obviously, when you're shopping around for used bikes, this can vary massively. You want to start the best ones looking for things with full service history. But if that's not possible, at least having some sort of documentation for the last owner's time frame of owning it, making sure you've got something to start with so you know that the bike over the last year or two has been looked after. You also want to make sure you've got the V5C there. This is the really sexy stuff. When you've got your V5C document, you'll be able to check things like matching frame numbers and matching engine numbers. You first need to locate both these numbers on the bike. The frame numbers are typically found on the headstock, just behind the handlebars, and the engine numbers will normally be stamped on the engine casing, often near the cylinder head or crankcase, but in Ducati's case, it was at the very bottom of the engine block. Once you've got them both, you can compare these numbers to the motorcycle's registration V5C document because they'll be printed in there. Once you've confirmed they're all matching up, you know full well that the bike is the one registered to the V5C. If there is no logbook, that to me is a huge red flag. Okay, I'd personally never buy a bike, or a car for that matter, if it didn't come with a logbook present at the time of sale. It screams dodgy and it screams a DVLA headache waiting to happen. But that's just me. If you're happy to deal with them, make sure that you factor in the replacement logbook and the time it's going to take you chasing up the DVLA into the price of the bike. You'll want to make sure that you're getting some sort of money off for that. But be warned, buying without a logbook is seriously dodgy because you never know what you're going to get at the end of the day. You could end up finding out that those logbook numbers, frame numbers and engine numbers do not match. So for me, that is the priority number one, ensuring the logbook is present and all those numbers match. Number two is cold starts. Now, it's really important when viewing your motorcycle that you go and view that bike and let it start from cold, because they're like lie detector tests for bikes. If it only starts when it's been warmed up, then there's probably something wrong with it. It could be a simple thing like old plugs, a weak battery, old fuel in the system, or it might indicate something bigger. So make sure when you arrive to view the bike in person that the engine and exhaust are cold to touch. Don't stand for the old excuse of, I just needed to take it for one last ride before you bought it. Because there's a very strong possibility that that owner is trying to hide something from you. Honest sellers will always let you view the bike and start it from cold. What you want to be listening for is a nice smooth engine turnover when you start it, and for it to fire up relatively easily. Once running, you want a consistent idle. Unusual noises like knocking and rattling, spluttering, they could all indicate a problem. Other things to check include weak or dim headlights. This can suggest a battery issue. And if the engine is spluttering or misfiring, it could be something as simple as a spark plug or coil pack, as I've mentioned, or it could be something bigger, like a fuel system or ignition system problem. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's all opportunities to negotiate on the asking price. But you need to know how far you're willing to go with that bike. Number three, chain and sprockets, they can really tell a story. Is the chain stretched? Sprocket chewed to pieces? A thick layer of rust and grime coating that chain? Well, these are all classic signs of neglect, and if they're neglecting the chain, what else are they not looking after? Much like all these points in the previous parts of the list, on their own, they're not the end of the world. A replacement chain and sprocket is really easy to do yourself. It's around £100 in parts, and if you're not happy doing the work yourself, you can expect to pay around $250, including parts and labour, to take it to a garage. So yeah, it's not the end of the world, but you need to work out whether it's something you want to take on when it's in conjunction with anything else you spot on that bike. On the topic of chain and sprockets, if you're serious about your bike's maintenance, you'll need to buy yourself a decent set of chain cleaners and lubricants, I recommend the set from True Tension, and if you use my code, which I'm displaying on the screen right now, you'll get yourself 30% off website-wide. I did a whole video on how to lubricate and clean your chain, and even using a paddock stand, so you can check that out in the pop-up banner at the top of the page. Number 4 is levers, bars and pegs. These can actually be good indicators of a bike's history and its crash damage. Has it got bent levers? Are they scuffed bar ends? Has it even got aftermarket pegs fitted? This can all be used to indicate a bike's history. A scuff here and there can be forgiven if the price is right. But if the bike looks like it's been dragged down the road at 30 miles an hour multiple times, then there's a very strong chance that it's been dropped and dragged down the road at 30 miles an hour multiple times. A few drops doesn't necessarily mean that the bike is completely done for. Cosmetic damage can be fixed easily enough. New fairings, new bits and bobs off eBay, some aftermarket parts, but just make sure you know you're getting it for the right price. Right, okay, little insert. I now realise the irony of what I've just said. So, aftermarket levers and bar ends and that sort of stuff, yes, look for them if they're the original parts and if they're showing wear and tear, scuffs, damage, indicator of crash. But a bike like mine, for example, I've actually got aftermarket levers and aftermarket bar ends. That's not an indicator of crash, that was a stylistic choice from my point of view to put some modifications on. So, take what I just said and try and see the original parts if the owner's got them. And if they haven't, then make your own judgment call, I guess. Number 5 is tyres. Ball tyres, cracked sidewalls, DOT code from 2014. Tyres are so important, it's vital that you know what you're looking for. Tyres are actually one of the easiest things to check the condition of. First of all, they come with their own wear bars built in. Tyres should be 1mm as an absolute minimum, and you can check by looking at the wear indicators or by using a depth gauge. You also want to check the sidewalls and tread for any cracks. Old tyres will go off over time and the rubber starts to perish and crack and split. Any signs of cracks, you should be looking at getting some new tyres. Finally, did you know tyres all come date stamped? What you're looking for is the DOT code on the sidewall. It'll be 4 numbers, usually in a circle. The first 2 represent the week of the year that the tyres were manufactured, and the last 2 represent the year that the tyres were manufactured. There's no hard and fast rule on a tyre's age and when you need to replace it. Some people will claim that you need to change them every 5 years, but there's also plenty of other videos out there on YouTube proving that wrong by doing in-depth tests about taking older tyres on track versus new tyres and finding subsequently no difference between performance, because it's actually about how the tyres are stored and how they're used rather than the actual age of the tyre. So go educate yourself on that, and then you can be the judge on whether you feel those tyres need replacing at a certain age or not, because you can use that information to make an informed judgment call. Just make sure you're not paying full price plus an additional £300 for rubber if you feel you've got any doubts about the state and condition of the tyres on the bike you're looking at. Number 6 is suspension and fork seals. When you get to that bike, pump those front forks as hard as you can. Do you notice any oil now dribbling down the front stanchions? That's going to be a blown fork seal. And if there's any chrome bubbles or pitting on those stanchions, well, you're going to need new stanchions as well, because no matter how many times you replace those seals, you're just going to keep blowing them. So you also want to check the rear shock. Is it sagging? Does it feel soggy underneath you? When you get on the bike, does it sag right down to the bottom? Like, that's going to indicate there's no damping at all. Then that rear shock's going to need a full rebuild. Still, as I keep mentioning, that isn't a complete deal breaker, but don't pay showroom prices for something that's got trampoline suspension. Number 7 is electronical gremlins. You want to make sure you're testing absolutely everything on this bike, not just the indicators and the brakes, but making sure the dash is working, make sure the horn's working, and try and have a quick look behind anywhere to see if there's any dodgy wiring and stuff going on. Because the last thing you want to be doing instead of riding the bike is chasing down some horrible electronical gremlin. If the bike has been fitted with like an aftermarket phone charger or satellite navigation system, chase that wire back into the loom, make sure it's been wired in properly. If it looks like it's been wired in by a blind man, then make the offer reflect that, because you know when you get home you're going to have to undo that work and get it right. So number 8 is fluid levels. You obviously, goes without saying, need to check the oil level. You also want to be checking for things like brake fluid reservoirs, make sure they're all full. And if the bike isn't air-cooled, make sure you check the coolant level as well. If any of these reservoirs are dry, well, what else has been neglected? It should start ringing alarm bells. How do you go about checking these levels? Well, that will totally depend on your bike. For the oil, some bikes have a dipstick. Others, like mine, have got a little window in the side of the bike. You want to stand that bike upright so it's nice and level, and simply remove the dipstick or check in that window to make sure that levels are all accurate. As for the brakes and clutch, there's multiple windows or clear reservoirs depending on the bike you've got, and you can check all these fairly easily. Number 9 is dodgy mods. Now this one's a personal preference because, well, from my experience, customization doesn't always mean better. If the bike has some premium brand modifications on it, then yeah, fine. That's probably a good thing. You're onto a winner because it would show that the owner looks after their bike and takes pride in it. But if you find some fake Akrapovic exhaust and cheap anodized parts from Temu, well, the owner's probably cutting corners, and that would, again, make me question where else are they cutting corners. If you're happy with the mods, great. If not, just make sure the price reflects the work you're going to have to undo or do right when you get home. And finally, number 10 is to trust your gut. Does the bike feel right? Does the seller feel honest? Or are you getting a bit of a nervous pang of anxiety about the bike? Are you feeling a bit pressure sold? If your stomach is saying something's off, really, my best advice to you is do not ignore it. Try not to let your head run away with you, or your heart run away with you, sorry, and start listening to your gut, okay? Listen to your head and walk away. But with that said, if the bike fits, the price is fair, and you're okay doing some TLC, then maybe, just maybe, this is the bike for you. So remember, a red flag isn't always a deal breaker. Sometimes it's just part of a to-do list or something you can negotiate on, get the price down by a few £100. And if they had said that the bike needed a little work, and that's exactly what you've found, well, perfect. Just go with your eyes open and your wallet slightly closed. Because your first bike doesn't have to be flawless, it just has to be yours. Anyway, I hope you found this useful. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, leave a comment below if there's anything else I've missed or anything you would recommend a new rider looks out for, when buying their first bike. And hopefully I get to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Pins and needles.